Hello, everybody. Dr. Phil here. This is going to be a video on job satisfaction in the broader context of organizational behavior. So let's start with defining job satisfaction. What do we mean by this term, job satisfaction? So academically and more broadly defined, we would say academically a pleasurable emotional state resulting from the appraisal of one's job or job experiences. So sort of based on how you think about your job and how you feel about your job. And obviously there is a ton of factors that, would go into how you feel about your job, coworkers, bosses, company culture, benefits, pay, etc. So what kind of things do you value in a job? Just, again, this would be a sort of a good time to pause the video and just maybe take a self-inventory, think about these two questions. What kind of things do you value in a job? Probably things like obviously the pay, the benefits, the company culture. Is it something I believe in? Opportunities for advancement and growth could be another important one. And what is it that makes you satisfied? And as much as everybody might rush to say money, most people will tell you that especially older people will tell you that's just not the case. It's, yeah, like money's important. You got to pay your bills. You want to have a decent, a good, a highest possible standard of living. But there's a lot of people that have jobs that make great money and they're not happy at all because, you know, they may have chased money in the first place. And then they sort of realize maybe later on when it was kind of hard to make a course correction, career and vocationally wise, that maybe that wasn't the best thing after all. And they could have perhaps made less money, but be more happy and, perhaps even more motivated at their jobs. So let's talk about value fulfillment. So we have what we call the value percept theory. And this is that job satisfaction depends on whether you perceive that your job supplies the things that you value. So, the question becomes, as a logical corollary to that, does your job supply what you value? And again, there's no wrong or right answer to that. Everybody's answer would likely be, if you asked 100 people, their answers would all likely be different because everybody values, different things. We may value the same things, but maybe more weighted on this one or less weighted on that compared to somebody else. What about satisfaction with the work itself? So we have what we call the job characteristics theory. And the job characteristics theory is very simple. It just simply says that jobs are more enjoyable when work tasks are challenging and fulfilling. And I think most people would, tend to agree with that statement. Characteristics that make some jobs more rewarding than others. And again, the list you see below here is, of course, in no way exhaustive. Variety of the job. Generally, people would say that the more the variety, to an extent, the more the variety, the more satisfying it would be. Identity, sort of everybody kind of puts on their work hat. So kind of like, who are you when you're doing that job? Who do you have to become? And ideally, it's, somebody that you would want to be outside of that. What is the significance of the work? Is it important work? Is it maybe life-saving treatment? Is it helping people with taxes who perhaps couldn't otherwise, couldn't afford to get them done otherwise? How much autonomy do you have? Some people like autonomy because, they like they sort of can get things done on their own. They're motivated. They don't really need somebody, standing over them to get stuff done. Other people probably would like autonomy, but probably don't need autonomy because, they're not necessarily self-starters. And then you've got people that kind of they know themselves well enough to know that, okay, don't like it, but I do know I kind of need somebody standing over me to, for me to get, like, I'll get it done. I just need somebody kind of keeping an eye on me. And then also feedback, you know, what kind of feedback do you get? Is it always negative? Is it sometimes positive? That's always good. I had an old boss that used to say, I like to catch people doing things right. And I thought that's so true because a lot of times, a lot of companies, a lot of instances, it's only like bad stuff you hear. So I think while that's important too, it's also just as important to hear about the good things that that you're doing. And moods and emotions. Even the most satisfied employees aren't satisfied every minute of every day. Obviously, we all know that, right? Work, even outside of work, you can't be happy all the time. That's just not possible. Satisfaction levels wax and wane, kind of like the moon, as a function of mood and emotions, right? And that might be seasons where there's other things going on in life that, inadvertently and unfortunately kind of inevitably affect your work performance. And sometimes, and that could, again, that could be good or bad. Maybe it's better Sometimes it may be worse. And then life satisfaction. So this is defined as the degree to which people feel a sense of happiness with their lives. Job satisfaction is one of the strongest predictors of life satisfaction. And think about why. Because you spend so much time at work, right? And you make friends at work. It's sort of like, it's almost like your family away from your family. Um, we tend to see an increase in job satisfaction has a stronger impact on life satisfaction than do increases in salary or income. And that kind of ties back to nicely to what I was saying before. You might be in a situation where you don't make a ton of money. Maybe you make okay money, but it's not great. But you do have maybe like a great work family, like people at work that you identify well with. You believe in the company mission, so on and so forth. So I don't think that's a surprising statement, but I think people tend to jump to the first thing they think about is salary and income, and I think especially as you get older, you sort of start to realize that I get that's important, but that's not the only thing that I care about. I also care about, again, company mission. Is it something I believe in? What are my coworkers like? What's my boss like? What are my subordinates like? So on and so forth. All right, thanks for watching this quick video, and I will see you all in a future video.